Everyone, welcome to our November webinar. We are so excited for today's time together where we're going to hear about some really exciting work being done in advancing palliative care education in 3 different schools of nursing throughout the country. So welcome. We see in our attendee list quite a few names of familiar faces or names. So we're welcome back for those of you who have been with us previously. And we're seeing lots of new names. So welcome. If this is your first webinar, we're glad you found your way to us. And we are going to go ahead and get started because we want our speakers to have as much time as possible. I'm Dr. Megan Lippy and my colleague, Dr. Andrew Davis. We are the co-investigators for the End of Life Nursing Education Consortium. We specifically support schools of nursing with their palliative care educational initiatives. I'm based in San Antonio. Dr. Davis is based in Portland. And again, we're thrilled to have you all here. Next slide.
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon.
And for all those new faces out there, could you just put in the chat where you're joining us from? That will be fun to see. Well, everybody. Okay, that's it for me.
Perfect. All right. We do want to just acknowledge the generous funding that we've received for our work that we do from the Cambia Health Foundation, as well as from LNEC. It is through those funds that Andrew and I are able to do the work we do in supporting schools. Also want to acknowledge LNEC and Cambia and the University of Portland, who sponsored the workshop that we're going to talk about. So next slide. The focus today, again, we have three teams of speakers who are going to share about their strategies, and we'll tell you a little bit more about how we identify these teams in just a little bit. Next slide. So this comes from this past summer. We had our very first ever workshop for faculty related to palliative care education. It was based at the University of Portland. And again, it was made possible by LNEC, the University of Portland, and the Cambia Health Foundation. So very thankful for all of that. I feel like I'm missing a funder. No, okay. So
You're
good. Anyway, so this workshop was sort of a vision we had to support faculty who are trying to be the champions for palliative care in their schools. Specifically, this past summer was the undergraduate programs. We were thrilled to have 111 faculty join us from 84 schools in 38 states across the United States. And part of our workshop was to have a poster session where faculty could come and share a poster, and it was 2 minutes, a very quick poster presentation about initiatives that were either planned or completed related to palliative care education at their school. And after that, we realized there is some incredible work being done that we really want to elevate even higher. And so we invited several of these teams or presenters to come join us for webinars, specifically the ones that are a bit further along in the development or have been completed projects. So this month, we've got 3 teams who are going to share about innovative strategies. We'll tell you about next month in a bit. So with that, we have 3 presenters. We're going to hear about artificial intelligence with SIM, which is exciting, from Dr. Bell from St. Elizabeth University in New Jersey. We're going to hear from Drs. Mary Knowlton and Dr. Gail Elliott from Western Carolina University about this really cool clinical structure that they use. And then we're going to hear from Drs. Wulf and Murphy Buck at the University of Maryland about a dedicated course that they have related to palliative care. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Bell.
As we're transitioning, we invite all of you, as you listen to these presentations, to post any questions you have for individual teams or for anyone. And we do have time, or for all of them, we have time at the end to have some interaction.
Hi, how are you guys? My name is Caroline Bell. I am an assistant professor at St. Elizabeth University. It's a small university in New Jersey. And today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my pilot project, which is called Artificial Intelligence-Based Role Play and Simulation in Competency-Based Nursing Education, how the two are related. Next slide, please. So here's the poster that I presented this summer at the LNEC faculty workshop. And again, you know, many of you guys, if you have any kind of clinical experience or clinical placement for students, you know that there's a shortage of clinical opportunities for undergraduate nursing students. And a lot of times, even when these opportunities are available in the palliative care sphere, the students that are able to secure clinical placements really don't have much experience or the ability to practice a lot of the difficult conversations and issues that we have in palliative care. So a lot of times institutions like mine use simulation or skills lab as a place to kind of practice these palliative care scenarios. And just to give you some context, how our scenarios are kind of run is that we're at a small university. You're at a small university. We do not have funding to have patient actors. I know some other universities have something like that. So what happens is a lot of the nursing instructors will run the simulation, and they'll be the voice of the mannequin from the control room during the simulation sessions. So with that, you know, a lot of the conversations run according to a script that is kind of a pre-processed script. And so what I kind of thought about doing was using this new technology known as Develop Generative Pre-trained Transformer 4, or as many of you guys know it, ChatGPT-4, which is a multimodal large language model created by OpenAI. And it has the ability to kind of bridge this gap between these structured conversations that we usually have to create a more realistic simulated version of a palliative care clinical encounter. So GPT-4 is the newest, most updated form of the LLM, the large language model. And unlike its predecessors, it actually has this awesome ability to allow this interactive conversation with provide a response to any question with a pre-programmed voice that's very really close to a human voice. So in the pilot project, I was able to take this new technology during a senior level BSN clinical simulation day. The students went through a pre-brief, an orientation to the simulation objectives, similar to their prior clinical experience. And then students were brought in to interact with this programmed mannequin. So instead of the instructor providing this voiceover and the voice prompts that usually occur, there was an NLN palliative care background that was fed to ChatGPT, provided to ChatGPT. Then I asked ChatGPT-4 to act as a role of a patient. So each student, in essence, was able to have a novel conversation with the patient at that point, and they were able to explore different difficult conversation topics like DNR, end-of-life symptom management in this safe clinical environment that we have. Qualitatively, the student feedback was amazing. They said this is the best simulation experience they ever had. They learned this is the most they ever learned from a sim. And quantitatively, I had the students fill out the student satisfaction and self-confidence learning survey, which is a survey to assess their own competence in learning during the specific simulation. And all of the students reported that they strongly agree on all measurements of self-confidence and satisfaction using this AI-guided end-of-life dialogue. Next, I'm thinking about how do we integrate this model into our curriculum? So since 2021 and the creation of the AACN Essentials, much of the focus has been on building and refining competency-based education. So stepping back, really, what is competency-based education? It's a system of instruction, assessment, feedback, self-reflection, and academic reporting that's based on students demonstrating that they have learned the knowledge, attitudes, motivations, self-perceptions, and skills that are expected of them as they progress their education. So in my mind, this project is really perfectly suited to fit within this competency-based education framework, as it can be integrated throughout the curriculum. It can be modified to fit the needs of each learner at virtually every level of a nursing program. So in competency-based education, the learner really takes on, or the goal is the learner to take on the authentic role of a graduate nurse. And these simulated scenarios really offer the student nurse an opportunity to engage in this process many times with novel conversations, again, in a safe practice environment. So in essence, we're really meeting the student where they are. Like I mentioned, the university I'm currently working at really doesn't have access to a huge amount of funding and patient actors. So things like this simulation are frequently used. But I think even in an institution that has a lot of funding, has access to many resources, it can still be a valuable learning tool as it's really cost effective. Oh, sorry, next slide. I'm sorry, I should have said that before. As it's really cost effective and can be modified quickly and often as needed by the instructor. So since this instruction method is really student-led conversation, I feel like the feedback and the subsequent self-reflection on each conversation can really be changed based on the student's desired learning outcomes within this program. So essentially this model can really be easily modified to fit in a competency-based education framework, really wherever palliative care communication techniques are being taught within your program. Next slide, please. So when thinking about curriculum mapping, I kind of just was thinking, how do we map this to some of the AACN essentials and the essentials in domain 2, so the person-centered care, and then the competency 2.2 within that, where they're talking about communication effectively with individuals. But again, because it's such a fluid program and you can kind of put in whatever situation that you want to put into ChatGPT, you can modify this for whatever works best for your program in order to achieve additional or maybe some alternative objectives. It also fits nicely within the competencies that we associate with the primary palliative care competencies for undergraduate and graduate nursing students, or the CARES framework. These competencies and recommendations for educating nursing students. The 5th recommendation is associated with communication, in talking about communicating effectively, respectively, and compassionately with patients, families, and interprofessional team members, and the public about palliative care. And again, the beauty of this concept is that you can modify it to fit any of these recommendations and to fit any of these outcomes that you're trying to achieve with the students.
You want to move to the next slide?
Sorry, I forgot that one. I'm used to doing it myself. I'm sorry. So yes, that was that past slide that I just spoke about. Now I'm actually on to the 6th slide. So again, this is the CARES competency that I just spoke quickly with you guys about. So if we're speaking specifically about palliative care, you can use this framework and modify it. And then the next part is the next slide. Sorry, go ahead. So previously mentioned, this educational tool can really be modified to focus on many of the aspects of palliative care communication. So in my mind, it can either occur throughout the course of an entire program, or maybe the course of a semester, depending on how you want to fit it in. So it can be leveled to the student ability. And I kind of thought about it, for example, it can serve initially as an introduction to palliative care communication, the idea of palliative care communication in maybe a freshman or sophomore simulation lab, where the focus is really on the introduction of these challenging conversations. The tool can then be scaffolded to, say, maybe a junior level nursing student, where communication techniques that they previously learned can be built upon and reinforced. And then finally, it can serve as a way to show students mastery of a challenging palliative care conversation, which leads me to the final piece of the presentation. Really, how do we measure this mastery and assess student competence? So that's the next slide, please. So I was thinking about, when thinking about evaluation, I know the project is really focused on communication skills, but I think you also need to think about it in the context of part of an overall simulation. So when you are evaluating the students, I think it's important that it should take place as part of an overall simulation, learning experience, and evaluation. But there are 3 tools that I think can really play a valuable role in the nursing evaluation process. Specifically focused on communication. So the first tool is developed by our own Drs. Lippy and Dr. Davis. And this is the primary palliative care nursing competence assessment tool. And this can really help evaluate student competence surrounding communication and communication challenges. This tool was created to support backwards design in competency-based education. And the first few sections of the tool are similar to this project in that they're very modifiable and can fit learners' needs. They feature a specific communication section that focuses on the cognitive abilities, the affective abilities, the psychomotor abilities. And again, what the instructor kind of wants to fit in there, they can modify what outcomes and student objectives that they're trying to achieve, and can modify the tool to fit the evaluation and assessment. The second tool is another communication tool called the Creighton Competency Evaluation Instrument for Palliative Care. And this was developed by Kirkpatrick, Cantrell, and Speltzer in 2019. And this is kind of more of what we think of in simulation world as, that checklist that evaluates competencies during a simulation. So the specific competencies, and you can check off either demonstrates or does not demonstrate. And really, this tool is nice because I think it highlights some of the areas of communication, such as effectively communicating with patient and significant other. It highlights things like verbal, nonverbal, teaching. And again, this is more for the instructor when they're evaluating the student with the ChatGPT dialogue to go through and check off, was the student able to do this? Was the student not able to do this? Were they able to do things like establish efforts for, were they able to establish trust? Were they able to use language that's authentic and culturally sensitive? Things like that you can go through this checklist and again, as part of a broader simulation assessment and evaluation used for each student. And then finally, there's a compassion competence scale. And this is kind of a little bit different, thinking of a different evaluation. Again, like I said, we talked about the competency-based framework is really focused on meeting the students where they are. So this is more of a self-assessment that students are able to evaluate their own performance as part of a reflection or part of the debriefing process. So there's a couple different ways that you can use it. And the CCS focuses on nurses, or in this case, nursing students, and their perception of their compassion, their communication skills through a self-scored questionnaire. It includes questions like, I can express my compassion towards patients through communication with them. Do you strongly agree? Are you neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree? So I think there's a few different ways that you can use this tool and evaluate the tool. Again, like I said, I feel like a million times, I think it's really important because it can be modified to fit however it can fit into your program. And I think can be a really valuable asset to palliative care. It's inexpensive, it's easily accessible, it can be changed for each student. And it's a really important strategy that we can use for teaching and practicing end-of-life discussions with undergraduate nursing students. And one more little fun fact before I end, it can actually generate images as well. This image I put in to generate from ChatGPT. I said I want a palliative care nursing simulation image, and it made me my own image that I could add to the presentation. So I thought that was really kind of a fun end to it. Last slide is my references, and like I said, please let me know if you have any questions at the end.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll get us started for Dr. Knowlton and myself. Thank you so much for having us. We're speaking to you from Western North Carolina in Asheville. So we're still recovering from Hurricane Helene, but we're really grateful to be able to be with you all and expand on our poster presentation from July and hear from everybody else. Mary and I are both faculty in the Accelerated BSN program at Western Carolina University. She's our lead program director, and I help her kind of lead our charge. And we've been working together on program curriculum changes over time, which is how this idea started and turned into a poster. Next slide, please. So if you're in this session, you're already likely very familiar with AACN's definition of CBE, the emphasis being on students' demonstration of knowledge, attitude, skills, etc. Our ABSN program was challenged by a few things: an increased cohort size. We seat a class every fall of 55 students. Competition for clinical sites with the other area schools, even our own. We have a traditional program and other area competition, and then limited clinical faculty. We also understood that competence doesn't occur with just one action at one point in time, but through multiple contexts and multiple assessments. So in looking for creative and fulfilling ways to integrate competency-based education, learning style activities that had maximum impact, we took a look at all of the outcome statements from the competencies and tried to turn them into experiential learning activities and observable assessments. In this case, it was the site that was the real rich source of opportunity. We had not previously considered sending first semester students to hospice or palliative care. And it was the prompting of AACN's recommendation to expand into new spheres of care that inspired the idea. because this setting in our area has a lower census and is an intimate care setting, we decided to base it on a precepted model and scaffold it across 3 semesters, and offer the opportunity for repeated engagement, which makes it developmental, and linking it to the bigger picture over time as the students will continue to connect content in this setting. Faculty were also able to work collectively to integrate the LNEC modules and build on experiences across all of the semesters. The learning itself is transferable because they have multiple demonstrations, and then they can take what they learn in this setting, advocacy, for example, and apply it in new situations. It is experiential in that it is hands-on, and we have designed written reflections as part of assessments tools to kind of figure out how this is changing their thinking. And then it's also active and interactive because the students engage in clinical and hands-on care, but it's also very interprofessional: chaplains, social work, nursing staff, CNAs, providers. And it's interactive with our own 4th semester students who then come back in a leadership role and do a pre and a debrief with our 1st semester students. Next slide, please.
The title of this presentation was End of Life plus Beginning of Clinical equals Better Together. So our focus here really was to share with you our unique methodology of introducing our 1st semester students to care for patients in the hospice environment. So what we did this under the guise of giving students the opportunity to practice their newly learned tangible skills of personal care activities. So the bathing and the bed changes, toileting. So they were working alongside the staff CNA personnel, very much in a precepted type of model. So although the students' primary focus was to practice these hands-on personal care skills, they also had the opportunity to practice what we call power skills, and that's that interpersonal communication, professionalism, demonstrating empathy, doing so with care and compassion. So many would really question us sending these novice students into an environment that often requires a bit of maturity or a bit of ability to just process that complex psychosocial aspect of the experience. And so to buffer those concerns, we paired the novice 1st semester students with a 4th semester student. We had a peer-assisted learning model. And so the 4th semester student was on site on the unit. They were there the whole time during the experience. They lead the pre-brief and also the debrief for the experience. Now, we also did some didactic preparation for our 1st semester students. We gave them information on hospice and palliative care, pain and symptom management, and then also legal and ethical issues related to end-of-life care. So although our conversation really is about our 1st semester students, we wanted to give you an overview of kind of how we have threaded hospice and palliative care experiences throughout our program. Again, that 1st semester experience really laid that foundation or lays that foundation for the experiential experiences throughout the program over these 3 semesters that we are showing you here. In the 2nd semester, the students will continue to work in that hospice environment, but do so in the home. They do a home health hospice rotation. That way they can continue to develop that comfort and that competence in end-of-life care. And then in the 4th semester, the student returns to that inpatient hospice setting. This time they are working alongside the RN personnel. They're providing direct patient care, but they're also simultaneously providing support and guidance and mentorship for those novice 1st semester students who are working alongside the CNA staff. So as our 1st semester students are working on personal care activities, our 4th semester students, as part of their med-surg clinical rotation, their focus is supposed to be on developing leadership skills through mentorship and guiding these new learners. So our 4th semester students have a leadership assignment that is tethered to this experience. So we are utilizing the hospice environment. We've just used that environment to create this multi-dimensional learning experience. Next slide, please. So logistically, it's a bit challenging. We have both first and fourth semester students that are scheduled in clinical on the same day. So the schedules have to be coordinated. So in full transparency, this is a bit of an arduous process from a scheduling perspective. It involves a lot of coordination, actually coordination across 3 different courses. Across first semester clinical, fourth semester clinical, and then also the leadership class. So having one person to coordinate the rotational schedules for the clinical courses was really helpful and a key to success for this. This experience is truly a peer-assisted learning model. The faculty are not on site in the facility during the day. They make rounds, they are available by call. But what we found is that these fourth semester students were ready to lead. They were ready to step up and mentor these novice students and really provide the guidance and support that they needed. All students, at the first, the second, and the fourth semester, any hospice-related experience, we have assignments that include reflective journaling. The fourth semester students, their assignment is a lot more complex. It is, again, part of that leadership course. And here we're really looking for them to demonstrate those leadership qualities. So their assignment is, again, much more complex and involved, includes questions about their preparation, their bias, their adaptability, personal comportment, their success, and their impact. And so as Dr. Elliott had alluded to, we are continuing to fine tune our assignment prompts. We're trying to make sure that we're really clearly matching them with the select subcompetencies for all of those assignments related to this experience. Next slide, please.
So when Mary and I sat down, well, our whole team, we're trying to decide, okay, what can we do where and how is it mapped? So these are all of the sub-competencies that can be addressed by this semester, specific to first semester. All of these can also be done in fourth semester, but you can have more leadership ones as the student, as their knowledge base and their experience base grows. So it's a pretty comprehensive list. We are continuing to develop and fine tune our CBE evaluation process so that we can more clearly distinguish which of these competencies that we're gathering both formative and then summative evaluation data on. We do have, Mary mentioned this earlier, some of the work that the students do pre-experience to kind of build them and make sure that they have enough content to be in the setting. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is our second year implementing this project, and honestly, we were flabbergasted by the richness of this experience for all involved. The structure really provided a wealth of positive benefits for the students and for the faculty. For the first semester students, they had, and their journals were just beautiful to read. I mean, but they were like telling us these stories about the human experience, the hands-on care, the compassionate care, the value of, care-based approach versus cure. They could see that and they understood it in a way that is much different than talking about it in the classroom. They were also able to understand and see the value of family-supported model of care. The fourth semester students seemed to have an epiphany about the wealth of knowledge and skills that they had obtained since the beginning of the program. And for nursing students, it's always so great for them to have confidence building experiences. And this was one. It was really nice for the first semester students to see the fourth semester students in that role as well. So the fourth semester folks had increased confidence, self-efficacy, and that was really evident in the leadership assignment submissions. And it helped too because they were returning to a clinical site where they had some familiarity and they got a full circle experience. From the faculty standpoint, students, their report of feeling supported requires less from us, even though every journal for the first semester students started, I was really nervous about this, but it was the most amazing clinical I'd had so far for X, Y, and Z, because this clinical site was very nurturing to them. So it was helpful because it required less input. So in the beginning, I was more present, but in the end, you know, I felt like I was detracting from the 4 semesters leading the debrief. They were checking in with the students and they were doing all of that stuff. And so it really shifted the need. So I stayed at the other clinical site. I really enjoyed seeing the students be able to directly apply assessment skills and see some of those nuanced clinical presentations that we talk about in class, cachexia, active signs of dying, breathing patterns, Shen-Stokes. So by creating this experience for students, it really helped to normalize hospice and palliative care and end-of-life care, and it helped decrease student anxiety about this, which is really important in any setting. It was also really nice for us to see the peer-assisted learning model really well executed. The students that were in the 4th semester really valued that role and the expectations, and they could rise to that challenge. The hospice facility staff are fantastic. They were very welcoming and supportive and student-centered. So they created a safe learning environment for the various student levels that we had. And then while I don't have any negative aspects listed on this slide, there certainly were a few. And some that we can share. As Mary mentioned, scheduling is more of a challenge because of the coordination between the classes. We currently are not able to get all of our 4th semester students back there. We have to select a certain number in order to get them in for that clinical rotation. And as our student numbers continue to increase, it's a bit challenging to have only one hospice site without overwhelming them. So we are currently exploring adding in another site to ease the load of that. Next slide, please. These are our references, and so we can move to the next slide. That's just the end, and we'll take questions, it sounds like, at the very end of this. So thank you for this time.
Take it away.
Okay. Hi. So I'm Janet Wulf. I'm an assistant professor at University of Maryland School of Nursing, and I'm here with Dr. Hannah Murphy-Buck, who is also professor here. And we are going to talk with you about a course that we developed that is a required course in palliative care, which all of our BSN nursing students take. Next slide. So we're hoping to describe the process of developing this course, give you a sense of kind of the structure of the course, our teaching philosophy, and the strategies that we use. We also will, at the end, have a link to our SWAY presentation online, which gives more detail. For instance, the syllabus is posted there and the assignment descriptions, because I know that I'm always curious about the details of how things are done. At the end, we'll also discuss our goals for research. Next slide.
So in the spirit of palliative care, we like to focus on the end. And so wanted to just sort of share a conclusion at the beginning of our presentation, which is that the opportunity to have a required dedicated course has just been really transformative for our curriculum. And this particular comment from a student from a course evaluation really sort of elucidated that for us. And the student wrote, "This course taught me how to be a more compassionate nurse and the power of having difficult conversations with our patients and their families and how that positively shapes the way we care for them." And when we read that, we just sort of thought to ourselves like, oh, all that work that we did to write this course and implement it, we're getting somewhere. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the development process. We wrote and implemented this course as part of a total curriculum redesign in response to the AACN Essentials in 2001. We started the new curriculum in fall of 2022. I'm sorry, 2022. Not quite that long ago. And our first cohort graduated in May in the new curriculum. And so, we, in looking at the revised spheres of care, were able to make a convincing argument to our task force that was sort of heading up the rewriting of the curriculum, that we had a level of faculty expertise that would support a standalone course, and that we could really sort of dig in on some of those palliative competencies in that domain in a particular way with a dedicated course. And somehow we got leadership support, and we're on our way. Next slide, please.
So briefly, the structure of the course, it's a 16-week 2-credit course. So most of our courses are 3 credits. This one carries a little bit less weight. It is taught in the second of the 4 semesters of our program, and we have about 50 students per section, 400 students per year. So when we complete this current semester, we will have had about 1,200 students go through this course. Next slide, please. Hannah, do we want to sort of
We
skip?
were skipping that slide.
Yeah, we can jump to the next one. So in terms of our design process, when we were thinking about how we wanted to help the students get through the course and the semester, but also value it, we felt like our priorities lay with meaningful impact, but trying to reduce student stress. And so we designed the course so that a lot of the grade from the course comes from the work that students do within the actual lecture time. So we incentivize their attendance as well by having small, like low weight graded activities nearly every day of class. This has been quite effective, actually, and students certainly appreciate that we're minimizing the amount of outside work that they have to do. We also felt really strongly about including some restorative practices in our course. Hannah is the director of the restorative justice on campus here, and so that was a priority for us, as well as making sure that we were teaching students various ways of practicing mindfulness so that they can develop the habit of self-reflection and develop compassion for themselves and the things that will prevent burnout in the long run. We recognized that this course had a lot of affective components, and so we wanted the class sizes to be smaller. We got down to 2 sections on each of our campuses. We wanted 3 with only 30 students, but we've worked it out with about 50 to 55 students per section. And then lastly, we knew it was important to include competency-based teaching and learning, and that this idea of having small graded assignments during class time was an opportunity to embed competency-based both teaching and learning, because the students have opportunities to demonstrate and practice what it is that they are learning during that lecture. Next slide.
So as Janet was saying, we use a variety of teaching strategies, and this is just a little bit more about those different sorts of assignments. But the backbone of the course is the Relias LNEC modules. We use those instead of a specific textbook. And so the students complete a module at a time, and then we reinforce that learning in class with a variety of case studies and other applied learning activities. We do, as Janet was saying, a lot of reflective practices, a lot of, kind of brain dumps, and then thinking through that particular piece. We also, as I mentioned before, have sort of we're very lucky to have as many palliative practitioners on our faculty as we have. So quite a number of palliative DNPs, and then also a lot of palliative researchers. And so whether those folks are involved in teaching the course or are helping with consulting or coming in to do a particular lecture or case study, we have lots of different folks who are touching the course with their expertise. We also do two sort of larger group-based exercises and then one individual exercise. That exercise is it's two soft chalk modules, which is sort of an interactive online module type of situation that has embedded activities in it. Those focus on both symptom and pain management. And then the two group exercises that we do, one is called Book in the Round, and each semester we choose 3 books that are memoir or some sort of reflection that's palliative and or hospice related, and students in groups do a sort of live discussion of the book where they distill themes from the book and link those then directly to themes in the course. So this semester, for example, we chose The In-Between by Hadley Vlahos. We chose Critical Care by Teresa Brown and Kitchen Table Wisdom by Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen. And the students then have a reflective assignment where they've read one of the books, but they've listened to all 3 presentations and they do a compare and contrast of the 3 books. So it's a nice way to get folks involved with literature without having a super long reading list. And then the final project for the course is a vulnerable populations assignment where students in groups identify a population and develop a teaching presentation for other nurses and student nurses as their audience around how to apply palliative care to that particular population. Next slide, please.
So what have we learned? Through course evaluations, we have been able to see that this class is really meaningful to students, and that was the bottom line for us. So the in-class activities that we did allow us to apply knowledge. Bingo. I wasn't afraid to take care of a dying patient. I felt I could do it. Like, this is what we're looking for. In addition, we had anecdotal feedback from an interprofessional day that occurs later in the student's experience of school, that our students were asking all the right questions of a standardized patient in an interprofessional group of students. Things like, can you tell me what you understand about your disease process? And do you know what an advance directive is? Things that weren't being asked otherwise. And so we were very excited about that. We also know that the course is a joy to teach as faculty. There are 5 of us who have rotated through teaching it. And additionally, our clinical partners are curious about it. And what's kind of risen from that curiosity is they want to know about the course, and they want to know about the competencies that our students are graduating with, because they want to be able to draw on those competencies purposefully. And they also have been open to developing some new practicum situations so that our students will be able to spend time with palliative nurses in a practicum that is palliative oriented. And so we're very excited about that. Next slide, please.
So before we go too much farther, we are in the process of developing a research study. And the literature, of course, shows that teaching palliative care helps people to do palliative care. So that's been established. But what we're really excited about in terms of the structure of nurse residency in the state of Maryland is that we have a consortium of nurse residencies. And our school is very closely tied to that consortium. And we are exploring opportunities to do a longitudinal study where we will begin to gather data on student competence and comfort, self-efficacy while they are enrolled in our program, but then we'll be able to follow them into practice, at least for that first year. and really hear from them, but also hopefully from their preceptors and nurse managers and residency coordinators about sort of what it looks like for these students who do have this specialized training, and hopefully compare them to residents coming from other schools with different curricula. Last slide, please. This QR code will take you, as Janet mentioned in the first slide, to a little website. If you aren't familiar with Microsoft Sway, it's the greatest way to build your own website. But we have just put together some additional information. Our contact information is there. We would love to hear from you, and are always looking for ways to partner and share what we're doing and build on the things that we're learning in spaces like this. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to your questions.
Well, wow. One of the things I want to say before we leave this last presentation is to invite you to share some of those resources that you mentioned on the faculty corner. If you're at all interested, I heard something about a syllabus maybe, and a particular assignment instruction. We have a great spot. This is for everyone on the call here, that on the faculty corner through LNEC, that houses, wonderful exemplars such as what we're hearing today. If folks are willing to share those, so that we can all find our way to integrate that into our own programs as it fits. So I would invite you to have a conversation with us later if you're interested in doing that. And thank you so much. Oh yeah, so that's another way to share. Michelle mentioned that you came to the workshop, and it was really great. It was, I think, another space, as you're talking about, Hannah, these kind of spaces where we can share collectively what we're doing and learn from each other. It's just incredibly inspiring, as all three of these were. And there, I appreciate some overlap. I noticed talking about CBE kind of came through all the presentations, the idea of maximizing available resources that you have or don't have, the value of having faculty support, administrative support to, and leveraging ACN Essentials to kind of be an avenue into expanding your palliative care course, for example. And scaffolding across the other beautiful thing is seeing how you can weave this across semesters developmentally, where the students are at. And I wonder, I think that most the questions that did come through were answered in the chat, I think. But I wondered if we could circle back a little bit to the idea of where you mix the student. This is a question I have anyway, the students across semesters. How was that? I get that it was really difficult scheduling wise, and maybe I can talk with you offline because I love the idea, but it sort of sounds like you had one hospice available to you. So it was really kind of limited in the number of students that could actually experience that. Did they, and the question is, did they have a chance to sort of say, I would like to do that? Or how did you do that?
I'll go ahead and speak to that. This opportunity for our fourth semester students to work with our first semester students is the hospice part is actually one of three components. So they can work with students in acute care or hospice or the skills lab. And so we actually do survey them and we ask them what their preferences are. And we try to abide by that as much as possible, with the goal that hopefully we can actually get more and more students to have that full circle experience, because we've seen that to be so valuable. So the first year we did not have as many students. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the second year we were able to bolster that number quite a bit. So that was actually a great opportunity to be able to do that.
Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to my partner here before we Well, let's just look at this last side first. The workshop that was mentioned earlier is going to happen again this year, coming up. Yay, we've gotten some funding to make this accessible to folks. So applications will open up in January. One of the important additions is we're expanding beyond undergraduate faculty to graduate programs. So we'll be able to accommodate 100 folks, undergrad faculty and 50 graduate, and it will be back here in Portland again. So more to come on that. And if you are on this webinar, you will get information on that when it's released. Oh, a little bit more here. And I'll just leave that slide up for everyone to look at while Megan, you take it from here.
So this is a question for all of our presenters. One of the things I'm curious about, so I recognize we have some attendees who are representing our practice partners, who maybe aren't in academic settings, but are more in our practice settings. And I wonder if you might share your thoughts on how practice partners might be able to work with, your schools, or if another school wanted to replicate this, what might be some thoughts to share with practice partners about how they could join in initiatives like this. Yeah, Hannah, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to this, though I think I really want to hear from others. Part of what I have been doing is working with practice partners to raise awareness about the specific competencies that we are teaching in these courses and the ways in which we believe this is sort of adding a more diverse set of tools to the new grad toolbox. So that has been a really interesting conversation, and I think that conversation has been the specific foundation that has led to the development of these additional practicum sites. Just a couple at this point, but I think as we pilot those in the spring, that we're going to get some other teams who are interested and willing to take students for a specific palliative practicum. And I think one of the challenges, and I especially want to hear from our Western Carolina folks about this, but hospice generally, at least in our area, doesn't take new grads. And as we are looking at workforce development and shortages, one of the places I really spend a lot of time thinking is, how do we shorten that time between graduation and being able to go into specialty practice? And I think these sorts of opportunities are exactly the way that we end up doing that.
Any of our other speakers want to chime in, or if you're in the audience and you have just a burning response you want to share, we always welcome in our webinars the opportunity to hear from our attendees as well if you have ideas.
Oh, Amy has a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Can I address Amy's comment? So Amy, I think that if I understand what you're getting at here, it sounds like it's partly it's hospital culture change, which we all know takes determination and the long view. But I think that one of the things that we are able to do is, because we have a entry-level advisory board, when we meet with our entry-level advisory board, which is practice partners from all over the region, we're able to have conversations about the things that they notice in our graduates and the things that we are trying to do, and that we get to ask them questions. And one of the things that came up at the last entry-level advisory board was there was concern about students graduating without having a fully developed set of interpersonal skills, those power skills from from the presentation. And we are able to now say, we are teaching power skills in our palliative care course. And it's reinforced in the interprofessional education simulation, and it's reinforced in the last semester when they do a palliative simulation. And the communication skills and the interpersonal relationships that our students are developing while in school are coming from, you know, a purposeful integration of palliative education.
Well, when I went to the workshop in July, and it was phenomenal. I learned a lot, and I'm trying to crack that end of life voodoo that you don't talk about. And so one group that was with me last semester, I've actually been able to work with them, and they're doing a hospice rotation in semester 3. And all of them have come back and they've all told me, that's not quite as scary as I thought. I said, no, hospice is not scary, and you shouldn't be afraid of hospice. You're actually going to learn a lot over there. So we're struggling with getting clinical sites, but we have the luxury in Abilene, and at our facility, we have not only outpatient, but we have an inpatient facility, and it is phenomenal. So I'm trying to see if we can get more med-surg clinical spots over there where they can do more of the one-on-one, because the patient ratio is no more than 1-to-4 over there. So I think that would be an excellent way for them to see that, no, that is not where nurses go to die. It's, you know, there's a lot more to it than what you realize.
I wonder if it's also just to plant a seed, an idea that it goes back to when we've talked about the idea of reimagining where not, I mean, end of life too, but where palliative care opportunities exist outside of hospice specific agencies, for us to think about expanding that idea and taking many of the principles and helping mentor our students in all kinds of ways to think about that and apply those in different settings. It also expands our resources if we think of it outside of those particular facilities.
Absolutely.
We are running up to the very last couple of minutes. If anyone has any burning questions for our speakers.
I do want to just, because I see some people have to run, I do want to just make sure y'all see, we do have our December webinar, which is sort of a part 2 of this type of series, where we've invited 3 other teams of faculty. We're going to hear from 2 groups that are sharing about interprofessional focused initiatives that they're doing to advance their palliative care education. And then also we are going to hear from a faculty member who did a needs assessment of his faculty as to what they need related to palliative care teaching in terms of knowledge and that sort of thing. So please join us December 12th. The link to register is under the upcoming events, their LNEC Faculty Corner. At the end of this webinar, we will, in the next couple of days or so, it might be next week, you'll get an email with more information. So again, we'll include the link to register for this next webinar. We do provide you with the slides, and we want to make sure you can have the recording for this will go on the LNEC Faculty Corner under a recorded session. So if you want to share this with your colleagues, it is going to be readily available on our LNEC Faculty Corner for anyone to view. So, but please join us. And then if you want to join us for, again, our workshop, now, if you already came for undergrad, you can't come again for undergrad, but you could come for graduate if you're leading graduate education. But we really hope you'll consider attending. So.
And I think one more well, we haven't given anybody a chance to ask a final question here.
We are at 2 minutes though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, all of you.
Yes,
and
thank you
for those of you that might be interested in LNEC, the content a little bit more, next April is a summit in Hawaii, and you can go to the LNEC website and learn more about that, where you can dive in more to the actual content as well. All right, it is in March. Did I say April? Sorry. All right, thank you, everyone. Wonderful. Hope we see you
everyone.
again next month. And thank you to our speakers again. Very inspiring.
Thanks, everyone.